Good morning, everyone. You're listening, or depending on which time of the day, of course, you're listening to me, or how you're listening to me. You're listening to Ben Vidgen on the Deadline Report. Ben Vidgen Investigates, Fresh FM. You can listen to me live on a Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. every second Wednesday, or alternatively, you can listen to me on Sunday afternoon for a late breakfast at 1 p.m. again every second Wednesday, Sunday. You can go to the Fresh FM show for the podcast, or you can come to my website for the podcast, or you can go to YouTube. So I have lots of ways to get your my version of the truth today, which is what we're talking about. The first section we were talking about my little show today on ABC, Authenticate, Backed Up, and Credibility. We dealt with A is for authenticated, and we explained the very, very important thing that when you get a bit of information, you've got to get authenticated. You've got to actually find out whether or not it's true, and not just blindly clickbait when you see something that fits with your dogma. Now, having turned around and found it's a little bit more complicated than that, because if you're going to be thorough and you want to know that when you're listening to something that it's actually telling you pretty accurate material, you want to see that their information is actually backed up. So as a journalist, for example, whenever I write a story, it's very important to me that I try and find 3 sources of information which are actually going to back up my initial bit of information. So when we're going to apply that to the whole issue of A, B, and C, the authenticate, I'm more than happy, and have in the past, to use off the record sources. So this will appear in your newspaper or on the radio as according to unofficial, according to an unnamed source, and that's your first clue. Does the information come with a source? Now, I'm happy to use an unnamed source. This is what I call a lead information. So someone's told me that, for example, when I write my book, that weapons were being smuggled into Bosnia. They were a person that worked for the United Nations, and they gave me lead information, as did several other. And same thing, I did a book about, my book involved about the issue of weapons coming into New Zealand and handing up in right-wing terrorist groups, because we were told that was a conspiracy theory. I wrote that book in 1999. I had probably about 10 unnamed sources. These are what I call my lead sources. Now, the second thing I have to do when you turn around and you do is that you've got to then, okay, you've got your lead source, you've got to be able to show the people that you can actually put your money where your mouth is. So, let's turn around and actually look. That situation I said in my book, State Secrets, where I said that weapons were handing up in the hands of right-wing hate groups. In fact, there were many people that actually were getting black market weapons back in the 1990s, which we now know it actually is happening. Though back then we were being told by the official people that no, that's not happening, and that's all a conspiracy theory. What I turned around and did was, of course, the next thing I turned around and did was having my unnamed sources. I then turned around and I went to Greg Newbold at Canterbury University, and he confirmed that what my information was consistent with what he had. I then turned around and I went to Les G, who had been in an army intelligence, and again he told me that what I had was consistent with what he had been told. And then I turned around and I went to Tony Spillane and John Anderson on New Zealand Customs Intelligence, who I've been working with, and again they said what I was uncovering was consistent with what they were told. And then I turned around and I then went to several members of the police, including Detective Sergeant Darryl Brazier of the Organised Crime Unit, again confirmed that he was able to give me examples of how weapons were landing in the hands of these groups. And then I turned around and I took that to the media spokespeople, and they said, no, that's, I said, I've been told this is true, this is happening. They said, no, it's not. I then turned around and read them off the entire list of sources, including the Commissioner of Police at that time, Peter Doone, who had said on radio that yes, this was actually happening, weapons were coming into the country and landing up in the hands of gangs. And the media spokespeople went, oh, I see what you mean, and they took it back to their person at that time. I can't remember, it was Jameson, who the chief Oink Oink was at the time, and he went, oh, no, that's not true. And even though I had 5 separate sources, all named, basically backing me up. Now, if I wanted to at that particular time, what I would have really probably should have even done, to really, staple it at home, was I had an opportunity to kind of go out there and actually see some of these weapons and actually put them in my hands and take photographs of them. I chose to be actually, at the end of the day, quite bluck about it. The idea about jumping in the back of Johnny Rotten's vehicle and going out into the middle of the forestry to it didn't really kind of appeal to my sense of self-preservation. But I was also aware of the fact that legally I was going to be in hot water if anyone ever actually challenged me, because the fact of the matter is that those weapons were actually illegal. But the point I'm trying to make there is that what I was giving you in the first case of the unnamed source is what you call the primary source. The secondary source that you get into, which is why I turned around and said went to lots of different sources. And very importantly, they were all independent of each other as your secondary source. And of course, turning around and actually able to provide physical evidence, which would have been in this case me holding a picture of me with weapons in my hands, would have been what you call your tertiary sources. So it's not just that your sources are coming from different information, from different independently from each other, but it's that the nature of the sources are also have their own distinct categories. So that's when we turn around and we talked about backed up sources. It's not just good enough to turn around and say, oh yes, but this link says what I'm actually, what I'm trying to argue. The reality is, to really present your argument is you've got to show that when you're doing your research that you've got detailed material sources that have been authenticated, which we dealt with in the second issue of the show, and that you've got backed up sources. The next bit of the show that we're going to get into, which I think I'm actually going to probably... We might go on a little bit about the issue about B is for backed up today, because in my third show, next week we'll do a part 2 of this A, B, and C aspect of it, and I'll deal exclusively on that show about the much more complicated and a very, very important issue about what is C stand for, credibly. What is a credible source? So let's recap that whole today. Is that we've got A is for authenticated. Can your information, do you actually have a source that shows that this information is actually accurate? It's not information that's been presented out of context. It's not information that's been photoshopped. It's not information that's been basically, clipped and tucked to present what it actually wants, but it's actually authenticated information, which, and of course, the way you follow up on authenticated information is you make sure that you've got as many sources to verify that information as possible, and those sources must come from independently from each other, and it of course helps if you actually stagger them differently so that you've got different categories. So you've got your unnamed sources that will maybe give you a lead, point you in the right direction. You've got your other sources that you've got from variations, academia, the official sources, the in my case the guy on the road, who can all turn around and say, look, we're looking at this from 3 different points of view and we're all getting the same picture. And of course you finish it up with able to provide that with physical evidence. And of course, when we get into the issue of physical evidence, I guess we're also going to get into the issue of not all physical evidence is the same. So we'll look at the overall is what is the credibility of your flow of information. I think that will do us for today, and we'll come back next week and we'll look at the credibility issues. And I'm going to go out today with my favourite all-time song, looking at the issue of fraudulence and integrity, and that's Mr. Babalina. You're on Ben Vidgen's The Deadline Report, Ben Vidgen Investigate, Fresh FM. Feel free to catch me on live Wednesday nights 9 p.m, Sunday at 1 p.m. every second week, alternating. You can go to the Fresh FM site for the podcast, or you can come to my website, or you can go to YouTube if you want to turn around and get, listen to it when you want to. That's it, guys. See you next week.